Hey there, y'all. Welcome to the ScholarAI Founders Pod. Today I'm here again with Shashi. YC has, as usual, released the request for startups. And today we're going to do a little game of bullish or bearish on YC's startup requests. For those who aren't aware, YC's request for startups is every batch that they do, so there's 4 batches a year, is their kind of bet on here's where we want to see startups that we think if they start today, they're going to be really, really big part of the future sort of thing. Some of these ideas are weird. Some of them are really, really interesting. Some of them are like very, very like topical, like just in reaction to something that might be a few weeks old. But I'll share a screen. Shash, you've taken a look through these.
By the way, I'm just curious, Lakshay, have you seen this? There are these memes going around about a version of YC, but everybody has to bench 225.
Dude, I want to be in that one. That's the only chance I have, man.
I really like this concept. Actually, it's got like a fun energy. Like, and obviously you're gonna get a bunch of like bro culture in that.
Yeah.
But actually, like while it was kind of meme-ish, I think it's actually kind of like a fun idea that somebody should try.
I think there's like a weird unsaid thing where like I find like the bodybuilder weightlifter trope of person like generally a really like stable person to work with, co-founders, whatever, but like there's just like this sort of like, oh, I put in 1% every day, I will get an outcome that they're like willing to commit to for like years on end. There is like a nice little kind of like founder overlap in there, you know, in that personality type. But yeah, no, I've applied to YC like 6 times, haven't gotten in any single time. If it's my bench that does it, dude, I'll take it.
I think you should emphasize your bench in your app. Maybe that would actually like tip the scales.
Yeah, no, there was someone made a joke about like I want a team that can hit PRs, not make PRs, which really, really got me.
Why are we picking? Let's do both.
Yeah, exactly. So for anyone watching, or listening, we're sharing screen so you can kind of see the request for startups on page. Again, as YC describes it, these are kind of hot ideas. They accept anything and everything really that's interesting to them, has traction. But this is really what they're saying is a really interesting bet right now for the batch that would start this fall, effectively. So there's 6 ideas. Shash, you maybe want to kind of like walk through the general tone of ideas. I know you gave these a scan.
Yeah, let's do it. So the first one is retraining workers for the AI economy. Well, this is obviously going to need to happen. We're going to need humans in the loop for lots of things, and everyone who's in this AI workflow is going to need to learn the tools. This isn't the first time that humans have had to learn tech tools. We all needed to learn how to use computers, and then the internet, and then mobile devices, and then software systems like Salesforce or Slack or CRM systems. So all of this it feels like a part of an ongoing pattern of technology, learning, and adaptation by the workforce. This isn't the first time we've ever had to do this. So yes, we're going to have people learn how to use AI systems and operate in the AI economy, and to be the humans that are in the loop as AI systems and subsystems are operating alongside them. What does this look like? Before we get into the analysis of this, let's go through all of them. Do you want to go browse through each of these, and then we can analyze more deeply? So the second one is video generation as a primitive. Are we going to be using video generation for lots of use cases? And if video generation gets faster, cheaper, VO3 is great, produces really compelling stuff, really funny stuff, but certainly convincing. And there's limitations on VO3. For example, there's a cost limitation of, is it worth $3 to $5 to generate a VO3 video for your use case? Is it worth the time that it takes to produce? And do you want more than 8 seconds of video? So there are these sort of like boundary conditions within which VO3 operates. But let's just say those boundary conditions fell away. We have so many data centers that you can produce video in what feels like real time, and you can produce a full feature film instead of 8 seconds. What are the things we might do with it? This sounds interesting, and perhaps a bit speculative, but we'll get back to it. The third thing
Yeah,
is
the
the
way
first.
I would
Go ahead.
color in the detail on the video thing, where the way that they're describing this bet of the sort of companies that they want is, um, if you're producing software, you're producing product, right? Like your outputs might be a Notion page, it might be a written document, it might be a JSON file, it might be a database, right? Um, the sort of bet they're taking is like if you look at the world from a different lens, where video is a common input and output to your systems, what kind of emerges from that? So one that's really clear to Luce is like you might be able to craft your own TV show on like a hand wave, right? Or video games can become very, very custom, that kind of thing. That's super like I hadn't thought about this, but ends up being very, very speculative, and I think opens a lot of thinking.
Great. The first 10-person, $100 billion company. Um, People can do a lot more with AI, and as we get into this agentic world, what a small, powerful team can get done is increasing really rapidly. So this is an interesting category. Moving on, the next is infrastructure for multi-agent systems, agentic work, and having agents that cooperate, parlay, perhaps agents that have different primary manager tasks, or managers or humans that they're serving interact with each other. All of these things have to happen in some kind of multi-agentic system. And so there's an infrastructure that needs to be built out there. The next is AI native enterprise software. So enterprise software is everywhere. We see entire categories of B2B SaaS that are effectively enterprise software that companies pay for as infrastructure to get things done with their workforce. So that's this next broad category. And then finally, using LLMs instead of government consulting. I've worked in the government consulting space, so I have some sense of this market and how LLMs can be used in that space to create efficiency is the final of the topics.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is normally, for the record, this list is like 14 or 15 something long. For whatever reason, this request for startups is only 6. What we're going to do is we're going to just try and take like the angle of like I'm a maybe kind of retail investor, Shashi is a little bit more professional. But from an investor's perspective, some of these bets are super, super AI heavy, super speculative. We're kind of just going to do like a bullish or bearish analysis, like first off initial rip, kind of talk about it sort of thing. So we'll do, Shashi, is like on reading a category. There's 6 of them. We'll go through each one by one. I'll count down 3, 2, 1. I want you to say bullish or bearish on that category, and I'll say my take on it as well. Okay?
All right.
So starting with retraining workers for the AI economy. Bullish or bearish in 3, 2, 1. Bullish.
Bearish.
Really? Why?
Training is a very difficult business model. Like the need is there. Yeah. Will you need people to adapt to an AI economy? Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Training and education, certification, these are all fraught business models. It's very difficult to build a business at scale. I've tried many different ways of doing this. And so what's the business model? Is the business model that you are selling education to the individuals? That's a failing business model. Are you selling re-education to the companies? The companies aren't going to pay you very much because most of their capital needs to go to continuing to pay for the employees while they're not working. So that's not highly fruitful. So the way that you build the financial part of a business in order to make this really successful, it just doesn't compute in any way that I can think of. There is absolutely a need. Is there a need? Yes. People need to be retrained. This needs to eventually happen. But what ends up happening is there end up being free classes. Like I'll give you an example. Like, so if you need to retrain, let's say there are no CRMs and suddenly CRMs get invented. And now we need to get everybody to use CRMs. Is there a business to be made on training people to use CRMs? Yeah, probably, but it's not a very exciting business.
Yeah.
But people will be trained to use those CRMs. And what happens? Some CRM gets really smart and they figure out, okay, I'm going to make all my training self-service and free. I'm going to make the easiest to use CRM and I'm going to make the easiest on-ramp. I'm going to make it free for the first 6 months and get everybody addicted to my CRM as the default. Then I can charge whatever I want in year 2, 3, and 5. I'm gonna be the default CRM. So all of this,
Mm.
the training part of it is the weakness.
I look at it as so for the baseline, like 100% agree that there's a need. When I look at like if I were to project like 10 years into the future, one thing that's kind of happening is that credentials are something that are getting like harder and harder to verify. Like knowing someone has expertise in a topic or management of like, oh, here's the state of my like, I have a junior engineer, I want to promote them to senior. I need to know that they can do like XYZ sort of work that qualifies them. Um, Doing that sort of thing is getting harder and harder because access to like AI native knowledge, that sort of stuff is like kind of messing up what baseline expectations is of like, I know SQL, but all of LLMs write my SQL, for example, right? And so I look at it as like, I think kind of tied to a certification driven economy. Like, let's imagine like one future, like AI is responsible for like the recruiting workflow, right? That's already kind of happening where like AI will do kind of your first filters in some of these like hot recruiting startups, right? Um, if you're able to pass along certifications that like an AI system recognizes, it feels to me like there's a good solid opportunity to like kind of like add a layer on top of LinkedIn that is like identity verification, knowledge verification, that is like you've gone through these training programs that are like AI certificates in the same way people do like AWS certificates, that like aren't free, but are kind of part of like almost like an HR department like default purchase. You know, like if I'm trying to upskill my labor force or like invest in my talent, there's one common or two common systems that we buy that become like certificates that people can like very validity like reinforced attach to their like LinkedIn profile or their resume or whatever that looks like 10 years from now.
Totally, but the problem ends up again being who are you selling to? I have a friend, so HVAC technicians, for example. I have a friend who was
Yeah.
building exactly this, a technology system to train HVAC technicians. Started 2 years ago, and they thought exactly along this way. We'll retrain the workforce for this very specific task. It didn't work, unfortunately. And it's not because of the idea, the concept that the market needs it is absolutely there. The concept that there is a shortage of HVAC, that people need to get trained, the training bar isn't high. You can use technology to do that training. All of those concepts kind of work. The problem ends up being who's actually paying you money. It's not going to be the HVAC technician, because they don't have the money to spend, and they're not going to find you among the haystack of things out there that they could go spend time and money on. Is it going to be the companies doing the recruiting? That's the model that they ended up on, as let's get paid by the companies who are short of HVAC techs, and let's go use that to be our wedge into this market. It didn't end up working out because these are cost centers. Fundamentally for the company, these are cost centers. They would rather just overpay for the guy who's got 5 years experience or for the guy who's been an apprentice. And so they end up in this really difficult position where no one's willing to pay them money, but they have to expend money to run their system. And yeah, it's got some value, but value to whom?
Part of the description here is kind of like it's sort of like a side bet on like the physical infrastructure investment in data centers and semiconductor labs, right? Do you look at like this statement and do you consider, is there a gradient of like AI training is a little bit more bullish for this category, blue collar or white collar worker versus this one? Like if they're betting specifically on like, this bet seems predicated on we're going to be building a lot of infra and there's going to have to be someone that teaches all of these like welders like fast and really quickly. Do you look at that as like any different between like HVAC or like restaurant running, that sort of thing? Do you think there's a distinction, or is it all generally falls to the same weakness?
In-person work, HVAC is a great example. Apprenticeships are really the best way to learn this. And if you can get an apprenticeship, then you've got the best learning model that there is. AI can play a supplementary role to that. Yeah, you can do some prep work in VR, AR, VR headsets. Yeah, you can do some written work, but really like You and I can do all of those things, but we're not going to be practically very good HVAC techs because we're not in the field dealing with the client, dealing with the environment. It's just different in person. And so I'd say for in-person tasks like these technician tasks, AI is only supplementary at best. Then on the other side, for finance, for HR, legal, these back office tasks that really can be done remotely for the most part, I think AI ends up being the big amplifier for the early adopters. So let's just take a second and review the Jeffrey Moore technology adoption curve. The very first slice of the technology adoption curve are the innovators. These are the people who are playing with AI for fun. They don't know what it's going to do for them or when, but they're just going to do it because it's fun. It's probably going to cost them money. They don't care. They're hobbyists because they're enjoying it, right? Like this is me in AI. This is like people who are doing it just because it's really fun, not because they know exactly what it's going to do for them. Then you have the early adopters. They're doing it because they want an unfair advantage over everybody else, right? They're doing it because they want to be one of the first people that finds out about X because it's going to help them have an edge in their market. They're going to do it better than anybody else. These are the people who are going to leverage AI systems and going to scale themselves to get 5 times as much work done. And they're going to make themselves so much more valuable to their employer or make their company more valuable because they can just get more done. Then they have the early majority, which are people who are now, they've like this thing has been tried by enough folks. They're going to go out there and try it too, but they want a lot more hand-holding, training, etc., in order to use this product category. Then you have the late majority, like for the most part, they're catching up. They're late on the curve. They're going to do it because everybody else is doing it, but they want a lot of service. The majority, the early majority and late majority, they want a lot of customer service, hand-holding, insulation, test points that prove it's already going to work before they start. Like they're looking for that kind of validation. Then at the very end, you have the laggards, the people that they're still using dial-up internet. Like they're still like, they're going to lag the market by a decade, and that's just by design. They're not going to change who they are. Okay, so in this world, what I'm saying is that the information workers, HR, legal, finance, the ones that are willing to be early adopters and the ones that are willing to be early adopters and early majority are the ones that are going to win the market, and they're going to scale themselves up. They're going to self-train because they see the ROI personally, and they're going to obviate the need for the bottom people. They're going to replace the need for hiring the next 5 HR people.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking if I should move to bearish or not. I'll think about it. I know a number of companies that are like in this space, but I feel like I hear so much success coming from them, but I don't understand the model enough. We'll pocket that for now. Video generation as a primitive, probably like the most like zany one out of this whole bunch. Bullish or bearish in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Bullish.
Bearish.
Dude, what is your problem, man?
Nice. You go first. You tell me why we should be bullish on video gen as a primitive.
Okay. So VO3 is already really, really fantastic. I don't know if you played around with like Google Flow or anything, but like people are able to create like short films to some capacity or another because these things are getting really, really good at like video consistency, right? Only produces 8 seconds at a time, and like it's pretty expensive, all things considered. But like the output format of video is intensely liberating, like intensely liberating. Like I think taking a bet on a company that's saying like, we're going to make like a Redis, or we're going to make like a PostgreSQL database equivalent for video, I think is a very, very strong one. Because I think it's kind of natural to assume that like media and entertainment is kind of bound for a very natural upset, where if you can interact with these sort of files, and again, they're pretty heavy files, like there's a lot of metadata about them that's pretty rich, you have a chance to impact shopping. You have a chance to impact like product display. There's a lot of like categories where simply controlling a visual on screen and having it be reactive or something that's easily mutatable is just super, super powerful in retail, in gaming, in media, in entertainment, we're already seeing people like make like AI generated TikToks that like people are not able to tell are fake. And I think once you get to a point where like I'm an artist or a writer or something similar, and I have a tool in my toolkit, which is like I could storyboard a short film and I can have the writing quality beats like a human standard, not like an AI generated one. You end up in a space where like the creative economy generally suddenly blossoms and opens up a lot. There's just not a tool for like I am George Miller directing Fury Road. I have my video gen primitives. How do I manage them, move them, mutate them freely in the same way I might in the editing room, right? A tool that does that, I think, would be like intensely game changing for like creative productivity generally. Your turn.
Okay. I really love the energy that you have for this space, and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. So a VC investment has to pay in a fund has to return capital to investors in 5 to 10 years. The video market is predicated on models getting better. It's predicated on models getting more efficient because this is a lot of work. And it's predicated on a massive increase in data centers. And we just don't build data centers fast enough for the things you're describing to happen in a short enough amount of time as a VC investment for this to make sense, in my opinion. So, so I just don't think we have enough hardware. I don't think we have enough data center. I don't think we have enough network bandwidth. And I don't think we have enough ecosystem. The market, where most companies are, is still trying to incorporate AI into their basic functionality. Like this pre-trained transformer from text to text, they're still figuring that out. So this idea of like of enough economic value being realized at the video layer, yes, it's going to happen, but we have a lot of preceding steps. And the gradual diffusion of tech advancement into the world and how companies do what they do or creatives do what they do, it's just like there's just too long of a delta there for me to feel like if we're choosing as a VC committee to make an investment, that this is going to pay while this fund is still alive, right? 5 to 10 year window. So that's the part that I'm stuck on.
Interesting. Well, I think that comes down like, I have to imagine like a good number of these things end up on a bet on like how soon can infrastructure come up, because so much of this is like physical infrastructure and data centers are going to come up. Again, I mean, why? If anything, I'm surprised there's not like a category for startups which is like support for physical infrastructure development. Like I'm surprised that's not a thing on here, like in some more tangible capacity. But I'm kind of the stance that like, it will happen, and there's so much like money and capital flying into the space. It's not even from like VC, but from like corporate investment. You know, like Google funding, like startups, OpenAI funding startups, whoever funding startups, right? That like, I have to assume that like model efficiency continues to improve, like quality of generation continues to improve, where it's just kind of like bound to get to a point that is usable in the same way that the reasoning models at one point were like super expensive and now they're like usable by the layman, right? The scale of video is much higher. Like it needs so much more, but like that's like, it's an order of magnitude like jump, you know, from like the general progression curve we've been on, which is why I think I'm willing to like say like, if there were a company in this space, I would give them like 5 of my angel dollars, you know? Like there is,
it's a flyer, right?
Yeah, it's a really long stage bet, and you're assuming that the data center and infrastructure like stuff that's happening in government and like Silicon Valley generally does pay off. But I'm kind of the stance that like I assume it will, is the way I look at it, sort of thing. Like there's too much investment in the space, and like AI hasn't felt like a bubble in the true sense that would like pop suddenly or like fall apart that ceases the cash flow coming into it, you know? Cool. Want to do the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. The first 10-person, $100 billion company. all this is really saying is AI makes everyone faster. They want to invest in companies that are indexing on lean. Um, I will predicate saying bullish or bearish on this one is weird because it's not really like a company concept. It's like an operating model.
Yeah.
Where like, I mean, we can do 3, 2, 1 bullish or bearish, but it comes with a nuance for me in that like, yeah, it'll be leaner, like next question sort of thing. But I guess we can do it. 3, 2, 1 bullish? Question mark. Yeah. Like I don't know. I feel like everyone should assume that with AI tools, like you should be able to run smaller, faster, leaner companies. Like I don't think that's like that crazy of a thing to say. And I hope that there are more like solopreneurs and that sort of category of people who are able to do a lot more on their own. But it is like, again, it feels kind of obvious. Like, it's just like, yeah, like make more money with fewer people as a KPI is going to be a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way I saw this one is, would I make the VC investment in the bounding box is a very strong team that can get a lot done. And $100 billion company, in my mind, translates to, can you get a company with 10 people to $1 billion in revenue? And basically what you're talking about is revenue hunting by a small company of super strong people. Would you make that bet? I would absolutely make the bet. Why? The ROI, even if they miss, is massive, right? Like you've paid for your fund. If they get, like 10% of the way there, you've paid for your fund. And for YC's investment level, you've paid for your fund if they get 1% of their way there. So, so you're making a winning bet, even if they miss this target of $1 billion in revenue, right? If they get to 10 million in revenue with 10 people, $1 million per person in revenue is pretty good, right? You get to 100 million in revenue, 10 million per employee is phenomenal revenue per employee number. So, so you bet. I say yes because as a VC, would I say yes to the bet? I would absolutely say yes to a strong, lean team who's revenue hungry. That's what you need. Ultimately, can you just get a small group of people to see the way to turn a revenue wheel and turn it and turn it and turn it as fast as possible, as big as possible?
Yeah, the thing that's interesting, I think, to like look at here is like, obviously Silicon Valley loves angel investing and VC investing and dilutive capital generally. But there was a reaction, not necessarily to this, but to like just the general predicate of like, why do all business owners in SF never take a loan? Like, why don't you start with a loan? And the thing that's like pretty interesting here is that like, if you have the conviction that you're going to run this sort of thing and you have like some sort of formula that gets you to like reproducible scaling revenue, or you have like a bet, the interesting question is like, why would you listen to this part? Like, why would you even say, give me 500K of YC money? Like take like if you have your turn wheel of like, here's how we bootstrap our way to this outcome. Like, why take YC money to begin with? Right. Which is interesting. I mean, obviously YC has benefits of like network or whatever, but it does feel like this predicate shouldn't be one that's bound to YC. This should be anybody in the world.
You're so right. I mean, that's a great point, Lakshay. And the biggest benefit of YC is that your your funding rounds just become so easy afterward. But if you're not taking a follow-on funding, because presumably you're just doing it with as little as 500K, then that benefit goes away entirely. So why does that company need YC at all?
Exactly. So we'll see. I do know, I feel like there are a number of people like applying memeably, because this isn't like a forced idea zone, but there are people who are like, my tagline, my business is the first 10-person, $99 billion company. And there's no like actual pitch in there.
What I want to see if I'm in that VC seat is show me like 3 people who know how to turn revenue. Like just like super hungry, super smart, willing to grind to get that revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Infrastructure for multi-agent systems. In 3, 2, 1, we'll do bullish or bearish. 3, 2, 1, bearish.
Bullish.
Really? Okay, you start. You go ahead.
The next level of of AI development is going to be agentic, and there are going to be so many agents that there will need to be some kind of traffic control system here, some kind of standardized way of communicating with each other. There's no need to use phone numbers. There's no need to use even human readable text unless you think it's for some kind of safety mechanism. But computers can communicate with each other rapidly and in ways that don't rely on human interpretable language necessarily. We're going to need some standardized ways for agents to work together, to coordinate, to give each other tasks, to identify their relationships, their clients, their budgets. There's going to just need to be a lot of work done at this multi-agent level, and there's going to be a huge value to coordinating that traffic. It's going to be valuable to the agents, funders, the people who are deploying those agents, because it will be cheaper to use standard infrastructure than it will be to try to figure out what's the right way to use this, use this API or use this whatever. So those standardizations are going to be cost saving to the agents, and they're going to increase speed dramatically. So I see it as a major win when the world has this kind of infrastructure. There's going to be lots of little pockets where people will have a chance to build it, and they're all going to get acquired. The only other thing about this I would say is I think the big players, the big boys, are going to have a significant part of this, whether it's build or buy. I would assume that Meta wants to be in the space, NVIDIA wants to be in the space, and most of all, OpenAI wants to be in the space, I would assume. So I would assume that that's your exit path. You could build something for 2 or 3 years, get some solid traction, and sell to one of them.
Yeah, I agree with the predicate that yes, agentic stuff is hard, and I've met a number of people, and the thing I'm very bearish on something like a LangChain or a Llama Index in general in the business landscape, where the thing I found is agentic frameworks are something that are still so kind of custom, because you can't fully black box your agentic control, right? So kind of building into a system that you don't fully own has felt to me as so far a decelerator rather than accelerator. Most people I know here will generally, unless they're a little bit more on the non-technical side, they'll generally roll their own agentic framework that they can have full control over before they even consider a company's tool. And I kind of look at it as look at what happened with MCP servers, right? There are a number of companies that popped up before MCP servers trying to make a common protocol for tool calling or tool cataloging, right? That once Anthropic size company came along with yes, here's our standard LLM tool, here's a common way for you to plug into it, most of the startups got eliminated, right? And it's not a hard, crazy thing to build. It's a hard thing to get the distribution standardization, right? It's hard to build a thing that enough people universally love that they would come to your startup and start advocating for it in other places, right? And so I look at this as yes, multi-agent systems are hard and these problems are valid ones, but the general category of startups that start building in this space are kind of just bound to get vaporized by an Anthropic or an OpenAI making a common open source standard or something similar for multi-agent controls. And a lot of them are already dancing there. It's just not perfect yet,
Yeah.
And they're highly incentivized because developer economies are really, really good for them. If they get developers on their multi-agent frameworks, their revenue shares are way, way better. So
we see this exactly the same way, actually, in the medium term, that a big boy ends up driving this economy. And the only question is it worth the bet in the very short term to get that 2-year cycle from investment to return on capital by finding a startup that can get enough traction in a direction that an OpenAI or someone else says, I'd rather buy that and scale it than make something else.
Yeah, I will say this lens of running a Spark job. How familiar are you with Spark?
I'm not familiar.
So in the data engineering space, data engineering used to again, it's all just SQL calls and task management workflows, that sort of stuff. Where if you look at a data engineer's screen at any given time, you'll see branches and chains that if you click into them are individual Python scripts or something similar. what Spark was is kind of like a big data system that helps you run like data engineering at sort of scale. Like it's able to like really like intelligently manage like memory and computer operation times for data engineering work that is super memory intensive and compute intensive. Um, I do think it's interesting to like think about what an agentic framework looks like when it's like more metal. Like if we were to rewrite the underlying code of like, hey, it's not just call API, wait for a result, pass that result to the next thing, but instead it's like, I have a Rust or a Golang memory optimized job that manages operations on these agentic calls really well. I do think that's interesting. I think that's more bound to be something that's like technically meaningful that like actually leads to one of these acquisition outcomes you're referring to. But right
Mm-hmm.
now, so far, it just generally feels like people are making these really light Python wrappers on API calls and like defining like, oh, here's how the UI looks for these Python wrappers I built. And that feels really weak to me, like really soft insofar as like being able to survive more than a couple months at a time.
Mm.
Shall we go next?
Mm-hmm.
AI native enterprise software. 3, 2, 1,
Bullish.
bullish question mark. It's boring. Boring survives. Companies are slow.
Yeah.
I think sort of inevitably there will be like as optimistic as you want to be. I don't think like AI eradicating the concept of like the enterprise B2B SaaS happens. I think it's just realistic that like companies are old, companies adopt things really slowly. So even if I find this category super boring and I would never build in here, I think naturally there's going to be a lot of money that flies around in this space, and that will continue to be the case for decades, realistically.
Mm-hmm. I agree. My take is that um, earlier this week you shared the two types of startup building
Yeah,
modes. Type one, where you're doing the same thing others are doing, hyper competitive, and you just out execute them, out grind them, knowing you're fighting a fight that lots of other people are fighting at the same time. And then type two, as you're kind of going your own way, building something that most people think is crazy or stupid or a waste of time. And you just kind of keep going your own path quietly until it blossoms into something hopefully really amazing that you have multi-year head start on.
yeah,
And this is obviously type one in that
yeah,
framework. They're going to be winners in this market. They're going to be super competitive and busy. And I would just distinguish like I don't think you and I are the kind of people we're passion driven. Like we want to
yeah,
build something that's like fun and exciting. We want to like enjoy that ride and that
yeah,
journey, and we're okay being contrarian.
yeah,
And this is not that kind of bet. This is like, yo, I have the same idea as everybody else has, but I'm just willing
yeah,
to put in 5 more productive hours a week than they are, and that's going to
yeah,
be the difference.
yeah.
And
Like this
and
is
so
the sort of
this,
company that I feel like if you live in San Francisco and your goal is like I want to retire by 32, you would
yeah,
squarely land yourself in this category, like basically like month over month until it works, sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. Why not? I mean, if you're willing to burn both ends of the candle and burn the candle from, every side. Forget about sleeping for the next 6 years because
Hmm.
you're going to build Salesforce, a rebuild Salesforce in the AI world, and you know that there are a dozen other very well funded startups to do the same thing, including by YC.
Hmm.
And just grind, and hope you get there.
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah,
bet. And yes, there will. I guess as a VC, from the VC perspective of making the bet, 500K is or whatever the YC amount is that goes into these startups is cheap. You get to bet
hmm,
on really strong teams because you're YC,
yeah,
and most of them will die, and some of them will make it pretty big, and they will cash out. This is a solid risk reward trade off.
yeah, yeah. Cool. And I just clocked this, but it's funny that even YC is throwing in like think cursor for XYZ
Yeah,
dialogue in the center of their pitch. Unbelievable.
yeah.
Apparently, I don't know if you saw this, but they showed like YC companies from the last batch, and basically like 60 to 70% of them called themselves cursor for like dental
Unbelievable.
onboarding software or like cursor
Yeah.
for like legal intake. I was like, come on, man,
Nice.
have some
Nice.
creativity.
Nice. Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
all right, last one. Again, this list is much shorter than it generally is year over year, but using LLMs instead of government consulting. Um, in three, two, one, three, two, one. Bullish.
Bearish.
Okay, interesting. You start this one. I want to hear what you have to say since you have more experience with it.
The hardest thing about government consulting is not the consulting. I mean, so I think this is like an outsider's view of like you look at government consulting, you're like, hey, this is so stupid. You're spending $100 billion on like a few teams to write reports and do analyses, and
Mhm.
like like this is ripe for innovation. This is someone who's never worked in government looking at government. The
Okay.
reality is like most government consulting is like it's based on trust. It's based on the ability to sell. And the ability to sell is like fundamentally like you're not even close. Like
Mm.
you could have a great startup who can do lots of logical reasoning from the outside, from San Francisco, and have them show up in DC, and bureau or agency or whoever will look at that and be like, cool, cool, you've got some smart people over there, but this is our relationship. And they have 30 years of context about us, and they know the way to get things done in this organization and how it works. Government is
Mm.
bureaucratic by definition. Like the government is the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So um, there are labyrinthian sales processes that a tech company in San Francisco will never decipher. Like the idea of like so a company like Palantir, for example, like when I was working in the government space, the Palantir crew was like they were just getting started, and so
Hmm.
we were like sometimes in the same skiffs, and they put in the time in DC for like years and years and years to overcome
Yeah.
this delta, right? But they
Mm.
weren't like they weren't born with the ability to just build a better product and therefore sell into it. Like the sales part is 90% of the job is can you sell to the government agency?
Mm. Do you find, I mean, like, I'm learning in real time from you basically, but like, I guess right now in the government, there's a lot of like cut of wasteful spend, cut of people that has happened, like
Yeah.
big emphasis on like AI development is being like very, very promoted by the government. Do you think that like the need for this sort of like these very intensely warm relationships is still a bottleneck to software? Or do you think there's like an attitude that might be shifting right now?
Government is a massive technology user.
Yeah.
The government, um, okay, so there are within the broader sphere of U.S. government. I'm only talking about U.S. government because that's all I know. In the broader
Hmm.
sphere of U.S. government, there are in the middle of that are the blue badge government salaried employees. Okay, like these are people who are officially on government payrolls, but then there is a massive sphere around that, which are the people who are in these quote unquote consultant contractor roles, who are doing all of this work that is fundamentally essential to the government. So pick a FBI scenario or a CIA scenario. Just pick a scenario. In the workflow of that task getting done, whatever, finding a bad guy, planning a military operation, anything that you can imagine like that, in that workflow, you're going to have blue badge and green badge people involved in that, but government employees and contractors, consultants involved in those things. So the
Hmm.
sphere of governments, what the government is, quote unquote, is much larger than just the employees, the actual employees of the government. It's this whole ecosystem of people who are critical to the process of the government operating. So I'm especially talking about defense here. So
Yeah.
in these defense scenarios, you can't get rid of all of that non-government employee space and have a functioning government anymore. Like those are all like one, it's really one thing.
Hmm. Interesting. I think I mean, I haven't like, I don't know what companies they're referring to in this little blurb right here where they're saying We've recently funded companies that help companies get approved to sell to the government called FedRAMP. We've also funded companies that help the government cut regulation, use LLMs. I'd be really curious. I don't think I could pull any of these up live, but really curious to kind of like debrief with you about like take a look at these companies and see what your take is on them.
Yeah.
For the record, I wasn't aware that most of these exist. I'm just not exposed to this space generally. But like, I do wonder if there is like a tone shift happening, where like right now it's just like this weird timing of like LLMs are getting pretty damn good at what they can do. And the government has also like slowed things down in regards to like people related work and is putting a lot more emphasis on like AI strategies very core to how we operate sort of thing. I don't know, did you end up reading that AI.gov document that came out, like the big AI document that the administration dropped?
No, I didn't read it.
Okay. Maybe a topic for next time. There was a document that came out like a week or two ago, which is like the big book of AI strategy effectively from the US. That I haven't had a chance to read, but a lot of it's just super, super highly indexing on infrastructure spend, efficiency spend, that sort of thing. But I'm curious if there is like a tone shift that is literal or if that is just like fluff in your eyes.
A lot of the consulting companies that serve the government have really smart technical people in them. So there's like sort of at a distance, you can think of the government as like a bunch of Luddites, like these are people who are not technically advanced. You can sort of like think of it that way. But in reality, you have a lot of these tech smart, savvy, like they may not be the top 0.1% in terms of technical advancement, but they're top 4 or 5% absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And San Francisco may be applying this lens of like, oh, they're not in this kind of top 0.1%. But there's enough technical chops there, and there's way more context and understanding of government, how it works, and how the pieces fit together. That you put those two in a head-to-head sales scenario of who wins the contract. The one in DC wins every time. It's just and you may see little contracts, like little exploratory contracts, go to the SF one. But really, like that, those are just on the margins at best. So I don't know the specific document. I'm looking it up now, but I would just say that there are some really smart people in these tech spheres in DC that may not be formally employed by the government, but are very much so involved in the overall government space.
I see. Interesting. Cool. I guess we'll wrap there for the day. We'll close this.
Awesome. Fun episode.
Thank you all for joining. Yeah, it was interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what like startups end up coming out. We'll see in like, I guess, formally 3 months, like what comes out of demo day and how these actually map. So in hopefully 3 months, we can revisit what we said and see like, where does money actually go? Who does Khosla give money to? That sort of thing. But until then, thank you for joining for this episode of the ScholarAI Founders Pod. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.